The other day, I ended up poring over James Baldwin's seminal essay, Everybody's Protest Novel, for the umpteenth time for well over an hour at a local bookstore. It was reifying, to say the least. James Baldwin remains as vital as ever, even as some of his major works draw closer to the century mark. His keen insights into who we are, who we really are, and who we might become often verge toward the existentialism of, say, Kierkegaard or Dostoevsky. Baldwin becomes all the more relevant for people of color like myself who read his works, especially as endless complex narratives are now continually thrust upon us by trends, intellectuals, the media, and pop culture. More importantly, so many of these narratives often force us into becoming two-dimensional versions of ourselves, limiting us into who we could become and how we see ourselves. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and please comment down below. This is a complex issue for many, and dialogue and discussion are more important than ever. So in Everybody's Protest Novel, Baldwin excoriates works that were often heralded as groundbreaking on matters of race and class. He takes particular aim at Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin and Richard Wright's Native Son, the latter being a far more personal risk for him, as Wright was very much a mentor of sorts to a young Baldwin. To be sure, Black Boy by Richard Wright is an incandescent memoir, as both a piece of autobiographical literature and an indictment of the abhorrent racism of the Jim Crow South that defined his upbringing. It was an absolute boon to my own sense of being as a brown kid growing up in rural America. While the challenges I may have faced paled in comparison to the ones Wright faced in the segregated South, Black Boy resonated deep into my adolescent bones. The sense of dislocation and incessant self-doubt being some of the many resonant themes I found solace in. On the other hand, Native Son by Richard Wright remains a tired, didactic work that echoes the same manipulative ploys the likes of Ayn Rand infests her works with. It's simply a political and philosophical premise disguised as a story, the kind of narrative the likes of Immanuel Kant warned us against. As such, Native Son is governed by explicit Marxist themes that detract, distract, and reduce any hope of understanding, transcendence, or insight to mere moralizing. It's also why the main character, Bigger Thomas, lacks any real dimension and is reduced to a caricature of sorts, less a human character and more of a political theme found in a pamphlet outside of a rally. And this is where Baldwin's excoriation of his mentor's famous novel is most profound. In the final lines of Everybody's Protest Novel, Baldwin's words resound with relevance and exacting precision now more than ever. Baldwin writes, quote, "The failure of the protest novel lies in its rejection of life, the human being, the denial of his beauty, dread, power, in its insistence that it is his categorization alone which is real and which cannot be transcended." Unquote. So why exactly is it relevant? Because the likes of, say, Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi are insisting upon eerily similar reductive narratives that people of color must yield to. We are not allowed to exist beyond the incidental superficialities of race and color. Instead, we are confined to them, trapped on an existential level, according to the likes of Robin DiAngelo. And denying such trappings risks being ostracized and subjected to all manner of pejoratives, from sellout to Uncle Tom, or simply being labeled as confused or ignorant. Never minding how profitable it's proving for someone like Robin DiAngelo, there is a pernicious neo-colonial thrust embedded in such proselytizing. A most telling example that emerged from such racial evangelizing is the attempt to refer to Latinos as Latinx. If you were to believe the common narrative held by those who insist on pushing such changes, it would suggest that the use of the term Latinx was galvanized by the very community it seeks to represent. However, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, according to Politico, only 2% of Latinos wish to employ the term Latinx. So where then did the term emerge? One can only conclude from a kind of neo-colonial elitism rooted in the notion that those that exist outside such communities and cultures must inherently know better. More tellingly, it reinforces the idea that people from such minority communities are mere Calibans in desperate need of a neo-colonial Prospero like Robin DiAngelo to guide them. And that's really just the tip of the reductive racial iceberg. There's something even more insidious taking place, perhaps something that, ironically enough, is steeped in racism. John McWhorter, a professor of linguistics at Columbia University and a person of color himself, has an exacting critique that demonstrates just how dehumanizing the likes of Robin DiAngelo and her popular work, White Fragility, are to people of color. Writing for The Atlantic, McWhorter argues, quote, White Fragility is in the end a book about how to make certain educated white readers feel better about themselves. DiAngelo's outlook rests upon a depiction of black people as endlessly delicate poster children within this self-gratifying fantasy about how white America needs to think, or better, stop thinking. Her answer to white fragility, in other words, entails an elaborate and pitilessly dehumanizing condescension toward black people. The sad truth is that anyone falling under the sway of this blinkered, self-satisfied, punitive stunt of a primer has been taught, by a well-intentioned but tragically misguided pastor, how to be racist in a whole new way, unquote. McWhorter readily echoes James Baldwin here. People of color are stripped of their identity, their existential realities, to further some nebulous trend or cause propagated by individuals who often exist wholly outside such realities. It most certainly is a pitilessly dehumanizing condescension, as McWhorter eloquently puts it. Most importantly, it is only our categorization alone which is real and which cannot be transcended, according to the likes of Robin DiAngelo. As people of color, we are disallowed our complexities and contradictions, all the very things that make us fully human. Instead, we are trapped by narratives, stripped of agency, and reduced to naive caricatures that betray who we could be as individuals beyond such confines, all in the name of some spurious cause from those that insist they are our moral betters. It's all the more insidious because, like all colonialism of the past, it pretends to be a force of good. In fact, it's a profound and pernicious hoodwink, and an incredibly profitable one at that.